Stillwater's Morning Scramble. Glad to have you here, and glad to have Joni O'Neill here with Total Health. Good morning, Joni.
Good morning.
I told you that when we were visiting on the phone that John and I were glad that when we saw that you were going to be the guest today because we had a good visit, a month ago, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
And this is something you have a passion for, and we're all looking to stay active in a world that it's tough to do that, right?
Absolutely.
So you want to talk about a number of things, but first of all was something, and I think we discussed this last time, about sleep. And for those of us that do really early morning shows or whatever, that's my excuse anyway.
Right.
Sleep may not be something that I do what I should. I mean, I probably get 6 hours of sleep.
Oh, you're not going to like what I have to say then.
So I know you're going to say we need more. And John doesn't sleep 8 hours. Do you sleep 8 hours a night?
Are you asking me or him?
I'm asking you, Joni.
Oh, I try. I don't always get it. Of course we don't. But the more I'm studying it, the more I'm learning about it, the more I realize it's not just about feeling good, when you wake up in the morning, but there's so many chemical and physiological things that happen or don't happen when we get sleep that it really makes you rethink it. And in our society, we tend to think of people being lazy who sleep a lot or too much. And that's one of the reasons I think that we don't admit it when we sleep well or are getting enough sleep or feel guilty when we get enough sleep.
It's kind of some swagger that we have when I'm too busy to sleep, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We think that is something to be admired, and really it's damaging our body, damaging our immune system, our hormone production, and making us obese.
Really? I hadn't heard the obesity with it, but why would that be? Because you would think if you're moving around more, then you'd be burning off calories.
Well, it has to do with hormones that are produced in our stomach, something called ghrelin, something called leptin. One of those makes you realize you're hungry. One of them makes you realize you're full. And the one that we don't produce when we don't get enough sleep is the one that makes you realize you're full. So you think you're hungry. A lot of times, especially at night, you get those munchies. You're feeling like you're hungry when, in truth, you need to go to sleep. That's what your body's telling you. But we misrecognize that as hunger. And so that's why a lot of us eat at night. And then that's why we gain weight, because those are calories we don't need, our body doesn't really want, our brain is just miscommunicating.
Okay, we call them midnight snacks, but are those really detrimental to us?
It depends. It depends on what your caloric intake was for the day and what your activity level was. If you've not eaten enough food during the day and your body's really hungry, then that's not going to be a big deal. But if it's just eating out of your need to sleep or just because you're bored or whatever, then absolutely, those are just extra calories that we don't need. And extra calories that we don't need sit there, they're stored, and mostly they're stored as fat. So,
when you said just before you're bored, that was very accurate, or because you're bored. I think that's what we're seeing now with the people who you have time on your hands and you get restless and that you walk over to the refrigerator, right?
Well, I have a great plan for when you're bored.
Okay.
So, first of all, remember last time we talked a little bit about thinking what we think about?
Yeah, and that makes sense because you said this sounds funny, but it does make sense when we think about what we're thinking about.
Right. So the first thing would be to do, if you're feeling hungry, is before you go and grab a snack, stop and think about, what are you actually feeling, and try to identify that feeling with one word. It could be stress, it could be anger, it could be boredom, or it actually could be hunger. So if you can recognize what that feeling is and kind of put it into one word, then you can take a different action, because our feelings are determined by our thoughts. And so our thoughts are something that we can control. So if you're feeling bored, then you think, okay, I'm bored. And instead of going to eat, you can say, okay, I'm bored. I'm going to, XYZ. Go take a walk, go exercise, read a book, do whatever, but recognize that you're hungry or bored. And I think that's a huge part of it, of people being aware, self-aware of what's going on. We just eat it out of habit.
Yeah. John has a comment here.
Hey, Joni, some of the words and phrases you've used right through there, do you meditate?
I do, actually. I have to say I'm fairly new to aware meditation. I think it's something I've always done all my life, just intuitively, but I'm doing a lot of studying now, researching now, and I'm actively doing it. So yes, and the power of it is incredible.
What'd you ask her that? You heard keywords?
I heard some key words that tie right back into it.
Do you meditate?
Not like I should.
Yeah.
Or when I do, I can tell a difference in me. But her aware and her think about how you think, or what you're thinking, and hey, your brain is always active. But it's how do you deal with that activity is the key.
Well, she's talking about, Joni, you were talking about how to kind of steer yourself. Maybe you're not even hungry, but you go, I don't have anything else to do. I'm going to go get whatever it is. I get some potato chips or whatever it might be. We can do that with other things too, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's something I like to follow called the self-coaching model, and it really is just a little step process that you go through. And the way that it looks is, so we have a circumstance. Our circumstance, whatever that is, whether we don't have anything to do, can trigger our thoughts. We have a thought which causes our feelings, which causes our actions, which produces our results. So it's like this step-by-step process that we go through over and over and over. And most of us don't recognize that we do have a tremendous amount of control, because nobody can make us feel anything.
Right.
We feel based on what we think. So just for example, someone says, your hair is blue. Now, if your hair is really blue, then that could affect you. If your hair is not blue, you're not going to be offended, because that's not true. So in the same sense, if someone says, you're a terrible radio host, you might be really upset or offended. But you could also, in your brain, say, okay, I'm going to process that thought, and this person knows nothing about radio, knows nothing about me, et cetera, and change the way you process that comment into a feeling. So with anything, we have complete control over how we feel. It's not easy, but there is a process, if you're self-aware, that you can go through stepwise.
I think everybody can relate to that. And like the saying, don't worry. It's easy to say, hey, don't worry about that, or don't worry. Yep. But how do you not worry? Well, that goes back to think about what you're thinking. And I think everybody has, I've done this, whether it's be something that's very small, and it just gets in your brain and you can't get it out. And it's really not significant until something significant happens and you realize, why was I worried about that? Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so many of us are not taught or trained to think about our thoughts. We just assume that that is it. And the way I like to picture it is my brain is a computer, and I am like the Wizard of Oz. I am the master of my brain. So the person above my brain, tells my brain what to think. And then your brain does it. It just naturally works hard to find solutions and problems and do what you tell it to. And if we don't tell it what to do, it's like a bunch of little kids. They're going to do what they want to do and make you crazy.
Right. No, that's to me that stuff's really interesting, and the worry stuff, because I think everybody knows somebody that worries all the time, and they can't help it. It seems like, but maybe through what we're talking about, maybe you can, right?
Absolutely, and I think recognizing what things you can control.
Right.
Is huge, because if you're worried about the weather, for example, storms, tornadoes in this place we live in, there's not much you can do about the actual weather. There's things you can do to prepare for it and to be safe during it, and to recognize the difference between the two and take the action steps that you can control. And then you can be as prepared as possible, and the rest you got to let go. And again, that's a process too, because so many of us internalize so many things, and when we're young, we learn to worry or not worry, and part of it is a natural inclination. So it's a process that takes consideration. I mean, I just like marriage. I've been married almost 30 years, and people who say, "Oh, you're so lucky," you're like, "What?" It takes work. Everything takes work to understand your thinking and to work on yourself and be able to make good decisions. It's a process, and so you don't just learn it and it's over. It's continuous.
I think you were going to have a comment, I thought, John.
Oh, I was when she was talking about the things you can control and things that you can't, and I was getting ready to spout off the last line and the wisdom to know the difference.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not that you have to even have the wisdom to know the difference, but the awareness to know that there might be a difference.
Yeah, right.
You know, and truly, you know, you were earlier you talked about, or you said something about how do you make a change, like in your thought process.
Right.
One thing that I read recently, for example, if you're trying to change the way you think about yourself, you know, we got a lot of people who have negative self-thoughts that are continuous. And in my business, we had a lot of people who feel like they're overweight. And what's interesting, I can have someone who's 50 pounds overweight who has the same negative talk as someone who's 5 pounds overweight. So when you're doing this thought processing to try to change the way you think, you don't go from, in your brain, you're thinking, I'm so fat, I'm so overweight, to, oh, I'm beautiful, I'm thin. You just take it to a neutral. You know, I have a body that works. And that's your thought for however long it takes until you can hold on to, live with, accept, because you can accept that thought. Your brain doesn't deny that. I mean, you do have a body, and it does work. And then gradually adding on those positive pieces so that your brain can accept it, and you can have a new way of thinking, and it takes time.
Yeah. You know, you were talking about somebody tells you your hair is blue. Mm-hmm. And I think there might be a case, or I'm sure there are cases where people are so insecure, even though they know better, if somebody else tells them, they may worry about their hair being blue after that, even though common sense, and they know better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that goes back to the weight thing, because there are people who are barely overweight or whatever, or whatever the case may be, who if somebody picks on them or teases them or whatever, that becomes an issue with them for their whole life.
That is absolutely true. And, you know, the way we respond to that affects our feelings, which causes our actions, which then causes our results. And so it's like this vicious cycle. If we can't stop and recognize where people have power and where they don't, then we can make a change. And truly, you know, no one, it makes me crazy, and I've done it in the past when my kids would say to each other or to me, you made me feel, you know, whatever. Because he did this, I only did that because he did this. I have 3 kids. But the fact is, nobody can make you feel. There's a feeling, and you determine what that means. So it's whatever you think that means. So just another quick example. You lose your job. You can make that mean a couple of things. You know, if it could mean that the job loss, you can say to yourself, oh, I'm a failure, I didn't do a good job, whatever, and it means that your life is in a really bad place right now. Or you could take that same situation and attach a different meaning to it, that, wow, this is a time in my life to make a change, to do something I really want to do. Yes, it's going to be hard, but this is an opportunity. And so it's the exact same situation,
right,
and it's 2 different thoughts. I mean, you choose how to look at it.
Yeah. No, I love this conversation, actually. I think at this time where we are right now, with everybody wondering what's coming next, this is important.